I'm going to teach you about how to say decimal numbers that are less than 1. So if I want my decimals to be less than 1, then I'm going to have 0 in my ones place. And this is going to help you understand how to say tenths, how to say decimal numbers in the hundredths, and how to say decimal numbers in the thousandths. Okay, so let's start. We'll start with tenths. So if I have 0 ones and I have 1/10, I say this as 1/10. It looks like this, 0.1. This is called 1/10. If I had 0.2, what would that be called? It would be called 2/10. What if I had 0.3? What would that be called? That would be called 3/10. And so on. Next, we're going to look at the hundredths place value. When we think about the hundredths place value, my smallest number in the hundredths is 0.01, and I would say this as 1/100th. If I had 0.09, I would say this as 9/100ths. What if I had this? What if I had 0.10? This would then be 10/100ths. Okay? If I look at this digit here, this is in the hundredths place value. And since it is my last digit in my number, I would have to say hundredths afterward. So when I look at this, this is 10. And then I would say hundredths because my last place value in my number is in the hundredths. If I had 0.52, this would be 52/100ths. Does that make sense? Now we're going to look at our thousandths. When I'm thinking about my thousandths, the smallest value for a number in the thousandths would be 1,000, 1,000th. And it would look like this, 0.001. And the reason it looks like this is because in 1,000th, there's no ones, there's no tenths, there's no hundredths, but there is 1,000th. So you would call it 1,000th. It would look like this, 0.001. Next, if I had 0.002, how would you say this number? You would say it as 2,000ths. And the reason you're saying 2,000ths is because 2 is the last digit in your number, and it's in the thousandths place. So I would have to say thousandths at the end of my number. So once again, this is 2,000ths because it's in the thousandths place value, the last digit is. So if I gave you 0.008, this would be 8,000ths. Now, if I had 0.045, this would then be 45, and the digit 5 is in the thousands place value, so I would say this is 45,000ths. Notice that I don't say 4/5,000ths. I'm looking at the 45 and I'm looking as if this wasn't here, and I would say this as 45. So this is 45 thousandths. If I had 0.086, I wouldn't say 86, I would say 86 thousandths. What if I had 0.321? Well, 3, 2, and 1, when you look at this together, this number, you would say it as 321. So when you look at this, you're going to think 321, but 321 what? Well, we look at our last digit, and the last digit is in the thousandths place value. So we would call this 321 thousandths. Now that you know how to say decimal numbers when they have no ones, we're going to think about what if we have decimal numbers that have ones, that has digits in the ones place as well. So let's say, for example, we had 1.6. Okay, well, I'm gonna say the 1 because I see 1 here, and 1 is just called 1. So I have 1. Anytime you see a decimal, that is called and. So I would say this is 1 and. I see a 6, so I'm going to say 6. 1 and 6. And next I have to think about what place value my last digit is in. Well, this single 6 is in the place value of the tenths, so I would say this number as 1 and 6 tenths. If I see something like 1.40, once again, I'm going to say the 1. The decimal, I'm going to say and. And next I see 4 and 0. Well, 4 and 0, I know that's 40, so I'm going to say 1 and 40. 40 what? Well, my last digit is 0, and it's in the hundredths place. So I would say this is 1 and 40 hundredths. Lastly, what if I have a number like 2.215? Well, I'm going to think, all right, this 2 here is just called 2. And my decimal, I would say and. So I have 2 and. When I look at 2, 1, and 5 together, I would say this as 215. So this is 2 and 215. 2 and 215 what? I'm going to look at the last digit of my number. This last digit is in the thousandths place value. So I would call this 2 and 215 thousandths. This is how you say decimal numbers.